Remember your first videotape job? The excitement, the fun? There you were, doing it all yourself, really making an impression. Then the jobs got harder, more complicated, more important. Other people became involved, and the novelty wore off. Now you've been given a complex production to do, and it could be a good show. But what should you be doing to make it great? What kind of things do you need to know? How can you keep from going over your head and still get it done well and on time? It's been left in your lap, and now you've got to produce. As producer, you're personally responsible for making everything happen, for gathering a bunch of things and people and video equipment and putting it all together to make a show. But before you get pushed into moving too fast, you'd better slow down and follow the 3 logical steps to an efficient, effective, enjoyable method of videotape production. Plan what has to be done and how you want to do it. Prepare everything you'll need, and with everyone who has anything to do with the production. Then produce, but only after you're thoroughly satisfied that everything and everyone is ready to go when you roll the tape. It all should start right here in a meeting room, long before you turn on a camera or roll an inch of tape. Because before you can coordinate and produce a videotape that does the job, you have to decide just what it is that your program should communicate. You begin to plan by finding out what it is you're supposed to accomplish, what specific objectives the program must achieve if it's on target. Sometimes this is simple, like demonstrating how to run a certain piece of equipment. And sometimes it's more complex, like trying to create an image of social responsibility for a corporation. You also must find out about your audience. Before you can inform, educate, persuade, or even entertain anyone, you have to know who'll be seeing your program. Find out how much they know about your subject and what attitude they have about it. Knowing your audience will also help you find the tone of voice your program should have, the kind of sophistication, or lack of it, that you should aim for, even the kinds of words and pictures you should use. And before you can get started, you'll also have to know some things about the real-world problems you'll be facing, your practical limitations. First, you'll need to know the level of equipment you'll be working with. If your VTR can edit, you can shoot out of sequence or add scenes to your tape after it's done. 2 cameras and a switcher will let you shoot longer scenes, give you a wider choice of camera angles, or allow you to shoot the whole show in one take. If you plan to distribute copies of your finished program, be sure your master recorder will allow for sharp, stable transfers. When going on location, be sure your gear is designed for portability and can be serviced or replaced in the field. You'll need to know things like how much power your lights draw, how close your zoom lens will focus, which colors your camera will reproduce faithfully, 100 tidbits of practical information that may affect your method of production. Next, you'll have to consider the capabilities of your people. You should be aware of what each can and cannot do, how responsible and dependable they are, and how much time each has free. If you're using inexperienced hands, it's wise to have someone who's been there before to guide them. Also, having a technical consultant on the subject matter may save you from making embarrassing mistakes. The quality of your finished tape depends to a large extent on your finding and properly utilizing the talents of your production people. A third type of production problems are the legal questions which may come up, especially if your program is to be sold or distributed widely. If you're using music, you'll have to get copyright clearance. There are a number of good music libraries. You buy the records or tapes and then pay a royalty fee each time you use a selection in your production. If you're hiring professional talent, be sure you don't infringe on union regulations in your area. The talent can usually tell you about conditions of employment, or check with their agent, or with the union office. To be safe, it's a good idea to get releases from everyone that is recognizable who appears or is heard in your program. This includes people in photographs or films that are used in your show. With children, get the releases signed by a parent. Don't forget to get permission to shoot if you're on private property. And police cooperation in public places is a smart idea. Finally, before you can begin production, you must know the budget limits. How much time you have and how much money to work with, how far that money will go, what you're expected to deliver for the money, and how soon, and what help you can expect from a sponsor in the way of materials, props, consultants, shipping, and other tangible contributions. Understanding the budget situation will give you an idea of how ambitious your project can be, or, as is usually the case, how thrifty and inventive you'll have to be. Could be you'll have to just grab a portable recorder and shoot it all by yourself, after all. After considering all of these real-life problems and possible limitations to your production effort, you're ready to make plans for how to use the production elements. These are the ingredients that you as a producer must add together and manipulate to come up with a program. To put them all together, you must have a working knowledge of what each of these elements can and can't do. You may, on the simplest production, do all the work yourself as a kind of one-man band. However, with a complex production, and if your budget allows, you may need skills for writing, for art, titles, and graphics, for set building, for performing, for music, for obtaining, running, and maintaining the cameras and recorders, for lighting, for locating props, for taking care of any special requirements of your show, such as finding locations or building visual aids. And you'll need a director with the talent to take all of these elements and skills and turn them into a show. If you're lucky, you'll know people who can wear several hats. Your job as producer is to know what each of the elements can do and at what cost. Then you can decide what skills your show needs and bring together the right combination of people to do the job, but not to start shooting. You've got a lot more planning to do first. Your next step is to find a format, a way of presenting your story which will juggle all of the previously mentioned factors, the objectives, the audience, the limitations, and the production elements, and come up with a way of presenting your material that's most effective and efficient. Here are some of your alternatives and the reasons you might choose one format or the other. Sometimes a straightforward presentation of the facts is not only the simplest, but the best approach. Make use of the medium by showing and explaining at the same time, using the on-camera presenter to handle introductions, summaries, and abstractions. Do you have available a recognized expert on your subject whose presence and opinion would lend interest and authority? If you're trying to demonstrate something, how it works, how to use it, how to fix it, how to almost anything, then build your script around demonstrations. Perhaps incorporate interviews with experts or users or people with opposing viewpoints. Or plan on documentary-type coverage of real events. Is there stock footage available, movies or slides, or other source material in a library or file? Skits or role-playing dramatizations can be effective, especially in training programs where you're trying to illustrate the right or wrong way to do something, or change an attitude. Use charts and graphs and titles and artwork to help explain and organize complex material. A light-hearted comical approach might work well, particularly if the subject matter tends to get dull and dry, or if you're talking to a young audience. Or is your subject controversial? Maybe you need a roundabout approach to make the viewer lower his defenses, to give the new idea a chance. Try a bit of entertainment, a disarming presenter, a panel discussion, pantomime, dance, background music, or a musical jingle. Any format you dream up probably can be made to work. Common sense will tell you which format or combination of formats will make the best vehicle, and which techniques would be hard or easy for your production group. Working with your writer or your director, you'll pick the best approach. Planning is almost complete, but you've got one more task: scheduling. As producer, you're the traffic cop who keeps the entire production moving, making certain that everything and everyone is available and ready at the right time, getting estimates for all expenses, and keeping tabs so you don't go over budget, and setting deadlines and making sure that they're met. That's the way to plan. Now it's time to prepare. So when the shooting starts, there'll be no delays waiting for a missing prop, no arguments on how to proceed. Where do you begin? Well, you can't have a program without a script. So you begin by working with your writer. He should know the subject, or know videotape production techniques, preferably both. Tell him about the objectives in the audience and the limitations you'll have, as well as the elements and the format that you think are appropriate, and let him do his thing. Then help him rewrite until you feel the subject is well covered and you have a script that's producible. The script needs to be right. It's your best form of communicating with everybody involved. Next, you'll need the director. Very often the producer is also the director, and that may be your situation. If not, however, you should involve the director as early in the project as possible. He can help with all the arrangements and the artistic decisions. And when it comes time to videotape, the director takes over. He's the expert in handling the practical problem of getting shooting done. He knows what the equipment will do and how to get the most out of the production crew. And most important, what makes a good show and how to add production values in shooting. Now that you have your script and the director, you have to find the talent. The script usually indicates the kind of talent to use. Sometimes the writer had somebody in mind as he wrote, or perhaps you or the director know people who would be right and are available. Naturally, if you can afford them, professional actors and actresses are worth the investment. They'll give you a polished performance, and because they are pros, they're able to work faster. That saves you time and trouble. A talent agency can help you find the performers most suitable to your show and make the arrangements with them. However, for some types of shows, you may not need actors. If a part calls for a demonstration, there's nobody better than people who know the thing they have to do. If your script has highly technical or specialized copy, get an expert in the field who will be comfortable with the material. Of course, for many of the simple parts, use your family, friends, and co-workers, anyone you can persuade to perform. The next step in preparing for your videotape production is to get work started on the titles and the artwork. Working with the director, you decide what's needed, and then sit down with the artist to plan the arrangement, the type style, and the background for each and every piece. You should provide the artist with an exact list of everything you need. He should show you and the director rough layouts of what he plans to do. Your next job as producer is to help the director make all the arrangements, for all the miscellaneous things that will be needed when it's time to shoot. Props, costumes, equipment rental, the crew, places to shoot, music, sound effects. The list seems endless. To make sure nothing is forgotten and that no extra unnecessary arrangements are made, the director goes over the script thoroughly and plans exactly what he wants to do. Sometimes the director will make up a storyboard, rough sketches that show exactly what he wants to shoot. He'll also make a list of everything he needs for each scene and ask your help in obtaining them. Out of the many phone calls will evolve a shooting schedule when all the people and equipment and things will be able to come together. Your final step in preparing to videotape is to meet with all the people involved to make sure everyone knows what they should be doing. This pre-production meeting is also a good time to get everybody's help with those last few hard-to-locate items. Finally, it's time to shoot. Everybody knows his part, what he's supposed to bring, and what he's supposed to do. But preparation isn't over yet. Set decorations and props have to look right. The lighting has to be right. And then it's time for the talent. They talk it through. They walk it through. And when all have a pretty good idea of what the director wants to accomplish, they rehearse, with the director watching, correcting. As the producer, you try to back up the director, catch any of the details he might forget or overlook. You've planned and you've prepared. Now you're ready to produce.
Everything's set. Roll the tape.
Everything is so high. I just don't know what I'm going to do. Every week the groceries cost $5, $10 more than the week before.
The title of today's program is Inflation in the Food Industry, a topic of interest to all of us. However, before we get into the details of inflation, let's examine the food chain, the distribution chain for foods. It all starts with the farmer. Food then passes through a processor, to a wholesaler, to a retailer, and then finally to you.
Okay, cut. Let's take a look at it.
If you're editing, when each scene is finished, make sure you've got it. Even though the scene looked perfect, check it on the tape and check the edit. Never move to the next scene until you've played back and seen what you've done. And right here is where everybody in production is often faced with the toughest decision of all. The director especially, and the producer, who is ultimately responsible. Is the material acceptable? Should you be satisfied with what has been done, or try again? This agony is an occupational hazard of videotape because you and all the others can see and criticize. But as producer, you bear the final responsibility for the quality of the show. You'll make the tough decisions. You'll agree to sudden changes of plans to improve the show. You'll keep track of the expenditures. You'll face the client or sponsor if the program goes over budget or doesn't meet the objectives. And you'll sit with the audience and accept the blame and the praise for what everyone else did. What the producer does is simple enough to describe. He gets everything and everybody together so that a videotape can be made. In the process, he makes a lot of decisions which profoundly affect the program. A good producer must be able to get the best from each person involved in the show. He has to know in detail his video production tools, lighting, music, acting, writing, camera work, all the rest. And he has to know his subject matter. Yet he has to be able to ignore these details so he can objectively analyze his program's total effect. There are many kinds of shows, each with unique requirements. There are many ways to go about getting a videotape made. And there are many kinds of producers. The best ones share a common trait. responsibility for getting the job done, and the satisfaction of putting it all together.